Hi there, I am Sarah Jane Case, and I'm the host of your new favorite show, Enneagram and Coffee. This podcast is dedicated to discussing the beautiful and hard parts of being human. We discuss the Enneagram, a personality map that is taking over the world, for increased self-compassion, personal growth, and healthier relationships. Listen to Enneagram and Coffee on the iHeart app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome to Book Talk for Book Talk, a literary podcast where we have been deep diving into your favorite novels.
This is Jack.
And I'm Amy.
And our listeners love to share their thoughts and theories via email and voicemail, so we're sharing some of them via our weekly mini episodes.
The views expressed by the hosts and listeners are entirely their own and in no way represent the thoughts or intentions of the original author. This podcast is a discussion shared to spark thought and conversation on the characters and themes of this novel.
Spoilers may be discussed with or without warning. Explicit language, as well as themes of sex, violence, abuse, death, and depression will recur throughout this podcast. Listener discretion is advised. Marina Flores is a poet, first-generation college graduate, and member of the LGBTQ community. Also a Los Angeles resident like us, Marina works in marketing, where she was among the 2022 40 Under 40 Award winners for the Conejo Chamber of Commerce for her professional and community contributions. In her poetry, Marina writes about her life's experience, queer identity, and womanhood as she demonstrated in her 5 publications, including her book of poetry titled A Journal Entry.
Welcome, Marina.
Welcome.
Hey, thank you.
Thank you so much for talking to us today. We met you at the Los Angeles Times Festival of Books. We were so happy to run into you.
Yes, I was happy too. That was a great find.
It was a great festival. I was really, really proud of everyone. I'm like the book community coming together. But I'm going to, because I can't let my own ego go. I was really proud of myself because when I came over, I looked at everything and I was like, oh, is this an anthology of personally written poetry? And you're like, yes, you got it. Thank you.
Yes, I remember that. You were literally the only person who figured that out. And you just glanced around too. You're like, oh yeah, this is a book of poems. And I was like, yes, it is.
Yeah.
Thank you. There's a sign that
I am
says
proud.
But no one reads apparently, even though I'm at a festival of books.
Right. And yeah, I was proud. And then we started looking at your poetry, and immediately Amy and we loved it, and we're just like, oh God, we need you on the podcast. And that's the story of how we met Marina.
So tell us about yourself, Marina, and your anthology.
So about my book, it took me 10 years to get it published. I've been writing poetry pretty much for as long as I could remember. And for me, in the beginning, it was a way to relieve stress. It was cathartic. I've always had journals. That's why the book is called A Journal Entry, because my mom, when I was a little girl, she gave me a book and she was like, write in it. And I never stopped. So that's really how it all started. And so eventually, within those 10 years, I had enough poems to have a book. And I was like, you know what, I'm going to start sending my work out and see if I can actually get published. And so that's how the first 4 publications came about. Was just me sending out my work, seeing if I could get published from here to there. One of my first publications was about the Thomas Fire in Santa Paula. If you're familiar, I was directly affected by that. The fire was a block away from my house. Luckily, it didn't actually.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, no, it was terrible. Luckily, the house didn't actually get burnt down. But some of those poems like that, with my life experience, womanhood, but mostly queer identity, ended up being in my book of poems. And so I got to a point where, like I said, I was able to write a book, compress it all together, and then I sent it out to a bunch of different publishing companies, contests. I'm still trying to get another book and see if I can get it. Basically winning the contest. There's like 3 right now that I had entered my book into by the end of June. And it took me 76 different publishers to actually get my book published. 76.
Wow.
In 10 years.
Oh my God, that's impressive because people struggle with the process, and the fact that you kept going is so impressive.
Yeah, I have an Excel sheet of all the times I've entered my book in different things or entered my different poems in different things, and it was 76. And out of those 76 different entries, I've been published 5 times.
Wow.
That's daunting for people who
Mhm.
write, whether it be poetry or fiction or nonfiction. It's hard to get
Oh, yeah.
published. It is, for whatever reason, so exclusive. And it limits access. It limits access to things like poems about queer identity
Mm-hmm.
that teenagers probably do need to read, that they need to be exposed to.
Yeah, exactly. In fact, I had a lot of teachers and young people, like people who were 12, come up and look at my book and they're like, oh, I've never seen this before. One person I remember was a young lady, and she was just going to college. She was 18 and she was so
Mhm.
excited when she saw my book, and she was like, oh my God, I need to get this. I've never seen anything like this before. This is the first time I've seen something basically about queer identity, about being a lesbian, about
Yeah.
loving another woman. And that's part of the reason why I wrote the book, because I could not find something that I knew so well in media,
Yeah.
like at all. And so it comes to a point where you're craving to see your identity somewhere else in the world.
Mhm.
And it came to a point where it was like, I'm not seeing myself anywhere else. So I need to be the person to portray myself out into the world so that somebody else can see themselves and look in a mirror. Because I didn't get to see that. Growing up as a kid, even now, I crave
Yeah.
queer stuff. I'll watch the same movie like 3 times just because it has 2 women and loving each other. The Secret of the Bees or something with the bees. That one. I watched that movie like 3 times in 1 month because it was 2 women loving each other. We didn't get to see any of that.
It is hard for representation and just being able for people to see themselves. And I think what's also super important is, maybe someone may not directly relate to the book, but you know what? It's really important for other people to see what other people are going through and realize that this is like a very common experience for a number of people in the world, where it's like people cannot block themselves out for reading other people's experiences.
I agree. I'm so appreciative of what you've done, Marina. I am also queer, and this has been on my mind a lot as I was reading your poetry, that I grew up in a family of cisgender privileged men who will never understand the experience, and they need to be exposed to that. And if I make them uncomfortable, I don't really care, because their experience is not the only experience that this world has to offer.
Mhm.
Correct.
And so I appreciate what you've done.
Thank you.
So you talked about that you've always been writing and that your poetry has always been there from the get-go. The journal really reads like a journal. So out of curiosity, did you follow the timeline of your poetry? Because like you can tell when you're falling in love, you can tell when there's heartbreak. So I'm just like wondering if you rearrange things or if it does follow the timeline of your journals.
No. No, just legit. I think the publisher was maybe just smarter than I was and did that for me, because at the time I had so many poems because I write every day. Okay. So at that time I had around like 300 poems that I had to choose from and put into, how much is that? How long is that? It's like 75 or 96 pages, something along those lines.
Yeah.
And so I had to choose from that big pot.
Oh my God.
And so I just chose my favorite ones and my best ones. And I asked my friends and my sister, okay, what are your favorite poems that I've written so I can put in this book?
Yeah.
And they're like, okay, here's 5 that I like. Okay, here's 5 that I like. There's 5 from all these different people. And I was like, okay. So I grabbed all of those poems and I dumped them in my book, and I tried to put them where I think they would fit best. And then I sent it to the publisher. They liked it. And they're like, okay, we're going to just rearrange a few of these things. And it worked out.
Because I really love when I was reading it. I mean, it doesn't take away that it wasn't in the timeline of your life, because again, people are like reading your experiences and it's amazing. But I love, love, love that it felt like I was reading a story in many ways, in a very personal, I mean, I am reading your story, but it felt very timeline wise, and it definitely hit at certain points where I was like, oh, I can see where this is going. I can see what's happening. And it's just so true to the human experience.
Fall has officially started here in Los Angeles, and that means we finally get to do fall activities.
I have been counting down the days for when I can go to pumpkin patches, maybe even hit up an apple orchard, and I get to do all of it looking super cute in my Quince boyfriend sweater.
This weather is perfect for my dark academia vibes, and I'm so excited to bust out my washable silk blouse because you know I'm going to be taking pictures.
Quince is known for their Mongolian cashmere sweaters from $50. And that's not all. Quince has so many other amazing things on their website.
All of those items are priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands.
That includes leather jackets, cotton cardigans, soft denim. Like my entire fall wardrobe is genuinely turning into Quince wardrobe.
By partnering directly with top factories and cutting out the cost of the middleman, we get savings as the customer.
One of my favorite parts about Quince is the fact that they only work with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices. And they still manage to get premium fabrics and finishes for that, luxury feeling for every item that they have.
Get cozy in Quince's high-quality wardrobe essentials. Go to quince.com/booktalk for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's Quince, QUINCE.com/booktalk, BOOKTALK, to get free shipping and 365-day returns. That's quince.com/booktalk.
So you write every day. So I'm guessing that means you were writing a poem every day, at least. So what's your inspiration? What's the creative process let me go back. Jack and I are fiction writers. We went to school to write fiction. So we're not poetry writers. We've written poetry, but we're not in everyday writing poetry. So I'm very curious about that creative process for you.
For a long time, poetry was sort of like, this is how I describe it. It would sit on my chest. And the only way to get this feeling out that it was sitting on my chest was to write. And so that's how it started. And then I came to a point where I started to write every day. And that came about, truthfully, was because I was with my partner and I had so much emotion. So much of it was just coming out that I needed to get out that I started to write every day. I was starting to get more inspired every day. And I had a very good teacher when I was in high school. And in fact, that teacher that I had that is who the book is dedicated to, is to her, Mrs. Lamb. Bless that woman.
Oh.
It's to her because she made me the writer that I am today. I remember in class, what she would do is she would have us sit down and for 30 minutes, we would have to write an essay about anything. We would get no prompt until the 30-minute start. And she said, just start writing.
Oh.
Move your pencil. Keep writing. It will come. Just move your pencil. Whatever it is, write it down. Whatever comes to your mind, write it down. This is for you. Keep writing. Whatever the prompt was, you had zero time to see it beforehand. This is your prompt. Go write. That was it. That's what she would do. And she did that to us for weeks until we had the AP exam and I passed, thank God. But that's what she would do. And I had another teacher who would tell us, just write, sit there and wait, and it will come. Just move your pencil. You have emotion. It's there. It will come. And so I embodied that. And so now I'm at my lunch. I'm at my desk. I'm sitting at a restaurant. I will pull out my little journal that's like literally the size of my phone, or I have a big one at my house, and I have something to write with me wherever I go. And if I have some free time, if I have 10 minutes or even less than that, I will pull out my journal and I will write. It will take me 5 minutes. It will take me 2 minutes. It will take me 10 minutes or take me 30. But I will write something. I take it out because I know I have something in me. I know I have emotion because we are emotional beings. It's part of the human condition to be emotional. We're not robots. Not yet, at least. I take my pen. I take my pencil. I know it will come and I'll just write. Like how I did yesterday. I was just on Instagram and I was angry about the comments I was seeing. And so I wrote about it.
Wow. I love that. That's beautiful. Just put your pen to paper and the fact that it will come. And there's something very freeing about that because like Amy said, we're fiction writers and, it feels sometimes like if we're not writing our book, then we're failing ourselves, or
Mhm.
where, you know, we're not contributing to this big ass story, versus knowing that like there are emotions inside of us and they need to come out, and respecting that. And, you know, whether someone wants to write poetry, whether someone wants to journal, writing is so freeing. And just writing about whatever it is, you'll know what it is because it'll start coming out.
Exactly.
I love that.
I don't journal. Jack does.
I journal.
And I've been trying to journal, and I just don't love journaling.
I bought
Now
you
I'm
a beautiful journal.
I know you did. You did. And I just am terrible at using it. So now I'm just like, wait, do I need to write poetry? Do I need to try that? Would that be a better approach to my journaling
Maybe
process?
because it's smaller.
Yeah.
That's what poetry is. It's
Maybe.
loaded
Yeah.
language.
Ooh.
That's a great way to describe it.
Wait a minute. I know. Like, loaded language. I love
It's
that.
a lot in the little. It's loaded language.
I love that.
I feel like, I mean, there's a lot of, I just want you to know, there's a lot of parts that you've talked about today where I'm like, okay, can I put this in an inspirational photo or somewhere? Ooh. So tell us which poets or authors have inspired you over the years.
So a big poet that really inspired me, and I think this is funny because when I got older, I actually found out that she was a lesbian, was Emily Dickinson.
I didn't know that about her.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
No, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that.
there are shows about this. Look it up. It's amazing. It's
Oh.
fantastic. The biggest one was Emily Dickinson, and I read her entire works like 3 to 4 times, and it came to a point where I would write down my favorite poems from hers and literally memorize them. And I got to a point where I memorized like 10 or 15. And I think now I only know about like 1 or 2, but definitely Emily Dickinson. I loved her work.
Mm-hmm.
And then of course, Maya Angelou. Pablo Neruda, because he was one of the first poets that I found who actually had Spanish in his works and was talking about a culture that I could resonate with, because before all these people were like, they were either white or black, you know? And I liked reading the black poets because they were people of color too, and I could resonate with the struggles that they had, but they were a different culture. And so I could see myself being friends with these people and really being validated by them, but we weren't exactly the same. But Pablo Neruda, or Nerudo, I actually forget at this point, he wrote in Spanish, and he talked about the things that I knew about, like nopales, you know, something that's so integral part of our culture. And he was one of the first people to actually do that.
Yeah, he's Chilean. Hey.
Yeah.
Chile.
Yeah, I have to. I'm like, anytime I can, like, shout out Chile. But you had the fact that you had to look for so many different parts, like so many different poets to address the different parts of you. And maybe one poet doesn't do it all. Like, you know, maybe one poet gets a certain part of our identity, but having a beautiful history of poetry, of authors, we get the opportunity to say, yes, I relate to you here. I relate to you there. To me, I get like a little overwhelmed with how many amazing authors and poets there are out there sometimes in the world, of just like, they're like, I'll never be able to read everything, but you don't have to. You just have to read the things that grab you.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
What I love is that you're reading from these different poets who speak to different parts of your identity, and then you're filtering it through to create something new. And you're creating art that speaks to all of your identity. And I think that's why artists create, is nothing speaks to every aspect of my identity at once. I want to be able to do that for myself and for others. And I think that's really beautiful.
Thank you. That's what I'm trying to do, actually. Trying to show my identity and other parts of me to the world so that other people can see themselves too.
And you're doing it.
Of what you've written, do you have a favorite poem, or do you have a favorite poem that keeps you inspired that you would want to share with us?
Oh yeah, my favorite poem I've written is called Everything. And that's probably one of my longer poems that I've actually written. I think I'm actually might take up 2 pages of my book. Most of them are only like a couple of stanzas, but that one is like 10 or something. It's a very long poem, at least for me.
Is that one in this? I can't remember.
Yes,
Is that
it
one
is.
in this one?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. I remember a very long one.
Yeah, it's called Everything.
Do you mind if I read just the first stanza?
Oh yeah, go for it.
I want everything. I want every single piece. I don't want a piece of the pie. I want the whole damn cake. I mean, just that first part is like, yeah, it is a great poem.
Thank you.
I'll tell you which one that I loved too. So this is one that hit very close to home for me. It was Age, and I'm gonna read it very quickly.
Go for it.
She moves slowly because of the pain. I help her undress. My mother's back is thin. Her muscles are weak. I put on socks for her. Dressed again, I am forced to watch her squirm into a comfortable position. I cannot touch. I cannot carry. I'll hurt her. So I watch the struggle. At last, laid down to rest, I tuck my mother in, roles reversed. So this is Age. My grandparents passed last year and their decline in health hit rapidly. And these are people that helped raise me, that taught me a lot about what to do, like life and how to drive and everything. And I was, very close to my grandparents. And then having to then help them in ways that you never really expect to have to help the people that raised you. That one, when I read it, immediately I was like, we're not crying, we're crying.
Yeah, my mom has a bad back. She actually has scoliosis. And every now and then her back will go out and I'll have to help her in bed. I'll have to bathe her, help her get dressed and things like that. So yeah, it's part of my life that you're right. You really don't expect to do, especially when my mom was like barely 50 or like 45 having to do this. But yeah, that's something I had to do.
It's hard.
I also want to read one of my favorite poems that you wrote from your anthology, because I think a lot of women can relate to this, and you can replace the idea of a dress with makeup or anything that we identify as feminine. So it's titled, You Look Like a Girl Today. You look like a girl today. Every time I wear a dress, never fails. I'm a woman already. Why isn't that enough? You look like a girl today. What did you think I was before? As if a dress proves who I am, a silly garment. I wish I could tear off my skin and show you what's inside. Am I a woman enough for you now?
I loved that one.
I did too. I struggle with that every day. And I think a lot of women do too. That are we feminine enough to be considered women? And I thought that was really, really beautiful. And I think a lot of listeners, because we have a large female listener
96% of our audience is female. So, we're doing something right.
Yeah, we're doing something right. And we've actually talked a lot about how dresses in literature and fiction and putting on the femininity impacts the characters in novels. And so I felt like this was really relatable, not only on a personal level, but also on an analysis level of what we've been doing in our own work.
And I guarantee every single one of our listeners, maybe there's that one person who doesn't relate to this part, but I feel like every woman has had that moment where people are like, oh, you look really good today. And you're just like, you put on makeup and that's all you did. And why am I, or like, you look really tired today. And it's because you didn't put on makeup. And it's just so frustrating where, why are we calling this out? We know what days that I'm wearing makeup and what days I'm not. Why are we celebrating the days that I do this? And I do wear a lot of dresses, and then I have like a weird range of like 70s punk rock grunge to sundresses. So it's a very weird range, but every woman has had that moment of like, am I just not enough? Like, is this not enough to be a woman for you? All right, I'm going to read one last poem. And this is the one I think look, I don't want to blame you, but if you didn't want us to read it, you shouldn't have written such good poetry. So maybe that's, I immediately blame you. Okay, so this is the one that Amy and I read at your stand, and this reminded us of one of the characters that we talk about on the podcast, and it's called Cactus. Red flowers and purple flowers, and I standing here, a cactus, can no one see past my thorns.
It's so good. And you have that little cactus sticker. I fucking love that sticker. That gives me chills every time I read it. I have goosebumps now. It's way more eloquent than the saying, don't judge a book by its cover.
Yes, absolutely. So if any of our listeners are like, who could that possibly be? Nesta. So if that might not mean anything to you, Marina, but yeah, this reminds me definitely of one of our characters, Nesta, and the epitome of that.
That poem is my sister's favorite too, and I understand why, because it really it embodies our culture. Nopales is a huge part of Mexican culture. It's on our flag. We eat them all the time. They're a symbol of strength and beauty, and because they have flowers and they have fruit, they're very abundant. They're a bountiful plant, and a lot of people don't think they're very beautiful, or they find fault with them because they have thorns. But I remember comparing myself of these women as flowers, because you see different women as a flower. That's usually what women are compared to. Oh, you're such a beautiful rose, but there are different flowers. Can you really compare the daisy to the rose to the lily?
No. But they're all individual, beautiful flowers.
Exactly. They're all beautiful individual flowers, but in my mind, sometimes I don't see myself as a flower. I am not that flower, this beautiful, angelic thing that's delicate. I've never been delicate. I'm a wrestler. I'm the youngest of 4 siblings in a house of 8 people at a fight for food. Like, no, I am not delicate. I'm a cactus, but I do have flowers. I have fruit. I am bountiful.
Yeah. I mean, and that's the thing, like nature's a range, right? Like you can say flower and you have the rose to a Venus flytrap. You know what I mean? Like you have a variety of flowers, and just like you have a variety of people.
Exactly. It's like, I'm not this flower, but I'm this.
So how do you feel poetry has been received in the modern era? I don't think people realize that the novel's a relatively recent concept, that it's only within the past couple hundred years that novels have really came about versus poetry. It has a much longer history, and that was the main form of written media that people were consuming. And now it really feels like sometimes that fiction and everything has taken over. So just wanted to hear your thoughts on modern poetry.
I think modern poetry really has a place in this world, but I found that certain poets are very popular. One, Atticus, I'm sure you've heard of him. He's very popular. Tyler Knott Gregson. And kind of recently was Maya Angelou. And at some point in my life, I really aspired to be like Maya Angelou, because she was such a profound writer, and I could resonate with a lot with that she's written. But I feel like poetry today is not necessarily swept under the rug, but it's definitely in the background. I do feel like novels and fiction writing is definitely in the forefront. They're main character energy, as the kids say today. But I feel like if fiction is the main character, then I feel like poetry may be their best friend. They're like the one who's on the side, but helps the character move along.
That's an interesting way to look at it. I do think poetry needs more attention and appreciation. I think poetry can sometimes be seen as, it's been done. The good ones have already done it. I also wonder to what extent, I'm going to make an analogy. Our movies used to be 90 minutes. Now they're 2 hours and 15 minutes, and they get longer and longer. And we in our society are becoming more accustomed to longer forms of content, and we want more content, and we want to be entertained longer. And poetry, because it is loaded language and it is short and it's punchy, doesn't satisfy whatever addiction we have to long form content.
I think that's true. And I think long form content has come about because when we look at art, the basis of art is that it is a reflection of life. And so the highest form of art is acting, and acting comes with theater and movies because it's a reflection of life. You see life happening right before you. And then after that is writing, because you don't have to be anywhere. You can be anywhere and do it. And all you have to do is have a book with you and read. And then it's painting, because you have to have eyeballs that work in order to do this. So poetry is a reflection of life, but it is a reflection with a mirror that sometimes isn't very clear. And I think that's what people struggle with poetry, because sometimes you can have poems that are great, phenomenal, but you may not understand it. It's beautiful. It sounds fantastic when you read it, but you have no idea what you just read. And I think that's what people struggle with.
I think that's a good point. And I think a lot of times people really struggle with being worried that they'll understand it and that they're going to miss the point. And you touched on that. And I think there's a big intimidation factor there. What are the poems that we grew up learning? Shakespeare. no one understands Shakespeare. It was literally a different language at that point, practically. It doesn't mean, Romeo, Romeo, where art thou, Romeo? She's not saying, where are you, Romeo? She's saying, like, why did it have to be you? How am I supposed to understand that at the age of 15? And that's what I think poems are for the rest of my life. And the fact that poems are open to interpretation, but it doesn't have to be intimidating the way that people think it is.
I think you hit the nail on the head.
I am a craftsman. I have nails. I hit them on the head.
So, Marina, do you have any upcoming projects you're working on or that you are excited about that you want to share with us and our listeners?
Well, honestly, I'm trying to do the TikTok. I did it honestly before I moved, and then I moved, and it just kind of went haywire. But my TikTok, my Instagram are actually the same thing. Well, they have the same tag, so it's MINAFLO1. It's just Mina Flow 1, just off of my name. And I actually write a poem, like I said, every day, and I put it on my story. So you'll only get that for the 24 hours.
Oh,
so
I love that. Yeah, I love that.
Right? Yep. Every day it'll be on my stories, and you'll get an exclusive poem every single day, Monday through Friday.
I love
amazing.
that. That's so smart. And then are you putting those on as TikToks too?
No, but I should.
You
that
should.
Would be smart, right?
Should.
That would be intelligent, but yeah, I suck.
Let us be your social media guides.
Yeah, I do marketing also, but I do social marketing specifically as my day job. So I'm immediately like, all right, here's you got to, here's the plan.
Yeah.
Put it on TikTok. Make sure your feed is strictly poetry. Do not leave that feed, and aggressively comment before, during, and after you post on other people's videos.
Oh yes, of course.
Well, I'm excited to know that when we follow you, we can see more of your poetry.
More of your poetry.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Absolutely. The one that I wrote yesterday, I got a lot of likes, so go ahead and check that one out.
Absolutely.
So it's Mina Flow 1?
Yep, that's it.
Thank you so much for being here today. I was saying we, but I will speak for myself. I love speaking with you today.
Thank you.
I love speaking with you too. Don't exclude me.
And just, I hope you have a lovely day, and we love talking to you, and, we'll see you next time.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Bye.
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 Thank you for listening to this mini episode of Book Talk for Book Talk. We encourage you to rate and subscribe to our show on your preferred podcast listening platform.
We would love to hear your thoughts based on today's conversation. You can submit your comments to our form at booktalkforbooktalk.com or via our Camflare voicemail system. Please visit booktalkforbooktalk.com for more information.
You can also follow us on TikTok or Instagram at the handle Book Talk for Book Talk. Bye! Fall has officially started here in Los Angeles, and that means we finally get to do fall activities.
I have been counting down the days for when I can go to pumpkin patches, maybe even hit up an apple orchard, and I get to do all of it looking super cute in my Quince boyfriend sweater.
This weather is perfect for my dark academia vibes, and I'm so excited to bust out my washable silk blouse because I'm going to be taking pictures.
Quince is known for their Mongolian cashmere sweaters from $50. And that's not all. Quince has so many other amazing things on their website.
All of those items are priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands.
That includes leather jackets, cotton cardigans, soft denim. Like, my entire fall wardrobe is genuinely turning into Quince wardrobe.
By partnering directly with top factories and cutting out the cost of the middleman, we get savings as the customer.
One of my favorite parts about Quince is the fact that they only work with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices. And they still manage to get premium fabrics and finishes for that, luxury feeling for every item that they have.
Get cozy in Quince's high-quality wardrobe essentials. Go to quince.com/booktalk for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's Quince, QUINCE.com/booktalk. BOOKTALK, to get free shipping and 365-day returns. That's quince.com/booktalk.